Bulgaria or to move to Mexico, you got to have money to move to either of those countries, and that's true anywhere. You have to have a certain amount of funds available. So that's the sort of thing that we'll be talking about. I mentioned my wife, Amy, who has decided that she will be more of a lurker in this, but she probably will pop out of the next room and tell me when I've made mistakes as we go through. It tends to be her role in our lives. So she's also going to be participating. If you stay for the second course, which starts in 3 weeks, she and I are presenting that jointly. So how's the class going to function? We'd really like everybody to remain muted throughout if you could. There are so many people. Oh, I'm not sharing? It says stop share, dear. Am I not
You're sharing? No, you're sharing, Jen.
Okay, Amy's not seeing it, but everybody else is. Good. We would like you to remain muted throughout because it's such a large group. We're at 40 right now. We still anticipate a few more. We will be recording this, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to start that recording right now.
Oh, I already did.
Oh, did you?
I saw
Okay.
it was paused.
We'll be making the recording available. That's something OLLI likes to do. If you don't want to be recorded, you can just turn off your screen and then your camera rather, and you won't be shown on this. We do prefer that you just use the chat for questions. There's a chat button down toward the bottom. If you click it, it'll bring up a window that lets you type in text. It's instant messaging. Laura's going to be monitoring that, so she'll interrupt me with any pertinent questions as we go. Oh, I mentioned we're recording it already. We do have some resources that are going to be available. I mentioned in my email the OLLI Moodle. That's where I'm going to be posting some materials for you. We're going to be using Zoom with polls. We have a couple of Zoom polls. And I also am going to be trying this year to accomplish a word cloud, just because it's interesting to do that. A word cloud is just an opportunity for people to toss in information, and it builds a graphic with the words that people provide. So we'll be doing some of that. To use the Moodle, there you'll find some any of the YouTube videos I show, and there will only be a couple of those, and several articles that I won't even talk about, but rather just they're available, things about issues to consider, what might you be concerned with. There will be some web resources as well. My wife and I, having moved to Bulgaria, have met an American here who's been living outside the country for 15 years, initially in Mexico, then Spain, and now in Bulgaria. And she's put together a pretty amazing website on moving out of the country. And I'll be making that available as a link in the Moodle. To get into the Moodle, you need to log in. This is the link. All this information, by the way, is included in the attachment to the message I sent out yesterday that had the student guide for getting onto the Moodle. And by the way, Moodle stands for something. I looked it up. I still don't know what it stands for. Each of the letters is part of an acronym, but I don't. It's just weird. To get in, you should be able to put in just your first, and then a period, and then your last name, and then the password of OLLI 2020. Once you're in, then it will ask you to change your password. If any of that doesn't work for you, I am not the guy to help. I don't have the technical expertise to assist with this particular thing, but if you'll contact the OLLI office, they can see to it that you get the information you need to get in. All of the stuff that's going to be on the Moodle will simply be supplemental. If you never make it in, you're still going to get as much information here as I provide. So what we want to talk about first is, and I have to get rid of some things here because I can't see my, why are you here? Why would anyone bother with the effort of moving to a new country at this point in life? And this is pretty much what we're going to talk about for this first session. The second session will be issues you should consider in planning to move if you were to pursue that. And the third will be actually how to go about putting together a plan. I do have a Zoom poll that gets at why you came here today. And let's see if we can launch that poll. You should see a poll on your screen, and you can just click the response that most applies to you. And it may be, depending on the size of your screen, it may be off the bottom of your screen a little bit. So you may have to scroll down to get more information on that. And look, it's working. Okay, just another moment. 36 of 40 of you have participated. 37 of 40. We're almost done. Oh, that's right. We have a couple who will not be participating. So I think we'll call it an end with 37 of the 40. And let me share the results with you. This is actually a really interesting result for me. The two at the bottom didn't get any respondents. I'm pleased that it wasn't that anybody thought this was another course altogether. That's really good. And it wouldn't have been a problem if somebody might just think it was a social experience. But last year, not one person in the class actually intended to move out of the country. They were just giving it consideration. And here we have 4 people who will be moving outside the country. We have one who's currently planning to, and then several others who are thinking about it. So it's a bit of a shift from what we got last year. I'm pleased to see that that we have so many people who are actually considering the move. As I say, my wife and I have made the move. I would endorse it. It's a really exciting and fun time, and we'll talk about why. Why it's exciting and fun, not why we moved. Am I back to my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Good. First, let's talk about if people are moving outside the country, and the answer is absolutely yes. And in retirement. Now, this is not just people who've moved outside the US. These are retirees. 760,000 people are getting Social Security benefits outside the US. I'd like to reassure you that moving outside the US doesn't cost you anything in Social Security. It continues to flow just as normal. Effective this month, Social Security requires that you have stuff sent directly to a bank. So that works out nicely. So your money just appears in the bank. A company or an organization called AARO, and I honestly don't recall what that stands for, although if you want to challenge me on it, I can find it because it's in the notes that I can't see. 5.5 million Americans live permanently outside the US out of the 360 approximately million Americans right now. Those are not necessarily retirees. Obviously, many of those are people who've just elected to move outside the US. Remote work has made that possible for an awful lot of people, and people are taking advantage of that.
Jan, it's Association of Americans Resident Overseas.
Okay. I'm not a member, but it was useful information. So this is where everybody's going. We already had one person in the group mention Mexico, because that's where Laura intends to retire. A lot of people have moved to Mexico, more than 1 million. And as of 2023, we're living in Mexico, nearly that in Canada, and then the UK. Interestingly, one of the things I often hear is people say that, well, language is quite the barrier for me, and I would only move someplace where they speak English. And that doesn't tend to be the truth for people who move outside the country. Although certainly there are lots of people who speak German or who speak French or Spanish who might move to those countries where those are the primary languages, and have some skill. I will tell you, my wife and I had no facility to speak of at all in Bulgarian when we moved here. We do speak a little bit of Bulgarian. Right now, either one of us could probably say hello to you comfortably. I'll tell you, we can go shopping in Bulgarian, but for the most part, it's just how much did it cost and hello and goodbye. We're not speakers of the language, but we are privileged as Americans that English is such a popular language as a second language for others. And we have visited several countries in Eastern Europe now and find that it's fairly easy to get by on English without significant problem. So how are people relocating? By the way, I didn't mention, but I will now, there will be a break at about 7:45. So if this gets boring and dull, you'll have a chance to get up and move about and find that book you want to read. There are multiple titles for people who are relocating. There are immigrants or emigrants, depending on which direction they're going. There are expats, there are digital nomads, and there are slow travelers. I want to talk about each of these. If you plan never to come back to the United States when you move, that's essentially my wife and myself. Amy and I are going to be staying here in Bulgaria, as far as we know, probably for the rest of our lives, or at least for the rest of one of our lives. That makes us immigrants to Bulgaria and immigrants from the United States. We are not expats, although most people tend to refer to themselves as expats or expatriates. An expat is someone who has moved out of the country and will be out of the country for a certain amount of time, but often they're there because of work, and they might be there for 3 years, and that's the end of the contract or something like that. Anybody who works for the State Department, for instance, is an expat. Digital nomads are people who are working and moving about, and they're nomads because they're moving, and they're digital because they have online lives that allow them to work without having to be located in a particular space. And slow travelers is a fairly new thing, at least in the literature. And those are people who are just moving about on a regular basis. They haven't relocated to a country, they've relocated outside of the country in which they are citizens, residents, and they're just moving about. This is not uncommon in Europe because there are about 25, maybe 30 countries that are now part of the Schengen zone. And we'll talk a bit more about that, but I'll just mention it right now. And if you're inside the Schengen zone as an American, you can stay for 180 days. Pardon me. You can stay for 90 days out of 180, and then you have to leave. Well, you can move to a country that's not part of the Schengen zone for a while, and then you can come back to Schengen after you've given up some more of your time. So it's a chance to move in and out of countries and not have to worry about residency or visas, that sort of thing. Okay, why are people leaving? Your reasons are your reasons, and we don't want to talk about them. You're welcome to share if you like, but there are lots of reasons to go. Many people are going for a lower cost of living or for other financial concerns. For instance, moving to Bulgaria, the lev, which is the currency here, if you looked at a price on an item on the shelf, the price would look very normal to you. Something that you're used to paying $20 for, you would pay 20 leva for. That's the Bulgarian currency. Right now, 1 leva is worth only 60 cents, however, which means it's a 40% savings on the things you're buying. It's not universal, but that's true for most items you might buy in a department store, or about anything you'd buy in a store, as a matter of fact, short groceries. Groceries are a little more expensive than the exchange rate might let you believe, but still cheaper than they are in the United States. Some people are looking for a more comfortable lifestyle, and we'll talk about that here in Bulgaria. The cafe culture is very much alive and well in Bulgaria. We have never been asked to leave a restaurant because we were there too long. Nobody's ever come over and said, you're going to need to buy something to pay rent on this table, which I have had happen in the United States. And in fact, if we want to leave, we have to flag someone down to get the bill. They're just much more casual about how people take advantage of the restaurants and cafes. Some people are looking for cultural experiences, and that was part of the impetus for Amy and myself. We're looking for something new and exciting in retirement, and we thought this might be it. We'll talk some more about the culture that we've come across here. Others are moving because of political concerns or safety concerns. These are the reasons that we know people are thinking that, but we don't want to press people into saying, I'm not comfortable here or there or whatever. Once again, your reasons for considering this are yours. And any reason you're considering it is almost certainly a good reason. Retirement means time for a new adventure. This is, for the most part, what brought Amy and myself to Bulgaria. We said we were looking for an adventure. When friends asked, why are you moving? We didn't say we're running away from the United States or we want to look for something cheap. We hear that a lot here in Bulgaria. It is inexpensive and we appreciate that, but that's not why we came. We were looking for an adventure. And that's one of the reasons we were willing to move to a place where we didn't speak the language, because we thought that would be part of the adventure. These are some photos of traveling around Bulgaria. I know they're fast, but I don't want to bore you. If you are not looking for an adventure in moving, you shouldn't consider moving outside the US. If you're to move outside the US, you will find it to be an adventure. More adventure some places than others. And there are things you can do to make it less adventurous. But it will be an adventure to move outside the United States. Something I often hear is that if you're thinking about moving outside the United States, you shouldn't tell anyone until you're ready to move. Amy and I talked about it for 6 or 7 years before we were even sure we were going to move. In fact, just before we left last March, we had, well, I guess it was February we left. It was March when we got here. But we had a party where we invited quite a number of friends, and among the 60 or so people in attendance, at a point we asked, how many of you believed we would ever really do this? And I think it was 4 hands that were raised out of the 60 or so people in attendance. We talked about it for a long time. The reason we thought it was a good idea to actually talk about it was it helped us to make it more real and reasonable. It felt like if we couldn't justify it to our friends, then it probably wasn't something we should be pursuing. But for the most part, as I say, when people said, why would you want to move? Why would you go there? The answer was, for us, we're looking for an adventure in retirement. To make the commitment, your first step is probably to get rid of your stuff and figure out how to pay for the move. For Amy and I, that meant we sold a house in Salem and downsized from 2,600 square feet to about an 800 square foot apartment. And we got rid of a lot of stuff. In fact, we had a garage sale with our daughter, who's now 23, and myself and Amy in 3 different parts of the house, and we competed to see who made the most money. It turned out we all came in within about $10 of each other. You're going to be leaving family and friends, and some people find that to be really difficult. And in fact, when people say, I couldn't possibly move outside the US, often this is what they cite, is I just can't leave my family and friends. I don't know how I could be in touch. I will tell you, it's pretty amazing what you can do with electronics now. Amy and I have several friends with whom we communicate on a very regular basis. Her best friend lives in Salem, and we often talk to her and to her husband for as much as 2.5 hours on a single call using video connection for free. So the technology is really pretty amazing now. Amy and I have a shared daughter who, as I say, is 23. I have 3 older children, and we can communicate with any of them without any problem, with one consideration. And that is, right now here in Bulgaria, it is, looking at the clock, 7:28 p.m. You can imagine it can be challenging trying to line up schedules, but weekends are easier. There are going to be cultural differences, and I have several times had a conversation with Amy since we got here, saying, what culture shocks have you felt? Because you hear all the time about the culture shocks of moving to a new culture. Neither of us feels much of a culture shock. There are cultural differences. For instance, all the holidays are different. We have Halloween upcoming, and we were able to confirm that here in Bulgaria, there will be some Halloween events, but there's a lot of resistance to Halloween. It's not a Bulgarian holiday. Similarly, we have Thanksgiving coming up, and nobody knows much about Thanksgiving here in Bulgaria, but we've decided to invite about 15 or 16 people to get together to have a Thanksgiving dinner. Those who've experienced it because they traveled to the US or have friends in the US are looking forward to it, and they're telling the others that this would be a good idea. You probably should show up. But there are all kinds of differences. One thing Amy and I have come to realize is the only time Bulgarians are ever in a hurry is when they're in their cars. They just don't hurry any other time. But as soon as they're behind the wheel, you have to be careful not to step out anywhere near in front of them. But the things are just slower here. Nobody's in a hurry to get anything done. Construction takes forever. Remodeling your apartment. We have a friend who just spent 4 or 5 months out of her apartment while it was remodeled, and she was just shocked at how long it took. I don't think she ever remodeled anything in the US, though, so I think she would find that it takes a long time anywhere. One of the
Jan, can I share something?
Well, surely.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, even though my wife and I haven't actually made the move to Mexico yet, we obviously have spent a lot of time there. Like I said, we're building a house, and yes, absolutely, there are a lot of cultural differences. I will say though that even just on some of our visits, I've had some culture shock. And one of the things that I realized is that the place that we are building at is not a big tourist area. And so we really had to adjust our expectations for what life is like there, right? Because it's not the same as here. Yes, it's slower. Mexico time is a real thing. Nobody's going to be on time for anything. But also just seeing the standard of living of the people around us and being able to fit into that. So there's definitely Gloria, we're in Manzanillo, which is on the West Coast. So yeah, I mean, definitely be prepared that aside from the cultural differences, maybe you'll experience culture shock, maybe you won't, but there is an adjustment period that you're going to need to go through.
Yeah, it's actually, I had intended to mention, I'm going to go back from bureaucracy and government and talk just another moment. One of the reasons we probably didn't experience culture shocks was we'd already visited a dozen times. So we had been here quite a number of times. I didn't mention, and I suppose I should, the reason Bulgaria came to the fore for us was because we had adopted our daughter here, the 23-year-old, 22 years ago, I think, about that, yeah. More than 20 years ago. And we took 2 trips to visit then, and then we waited about 15 years. She decided it was then time to go back to Bulgaria and get to know the Bulgarian culture and the country a bit. And then we just started coming on a very frequent basis, every couple of years for a while. So we've been here quite a bit before coming. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to get a visa and that sort of thing as we get through this. But I will mention, when we went to get our visas, we had to fly to Los Angeles to get a visa that would allow us to stay 90 days as resident. And then, well, I'm sorry, no, 90 days is what we could stay without a visa. The visa allowed us to stay for 180 days. So we flew to Los Angeles to get our visas. And I was the first to step up to the counter dealing with the bureaucracy in Bulgaria, which happened to be transplanted into Los Angeles. And I mentioned why we were there. And the woman at the counter said, "So have you ever visited Bulgaria?" And I was somewhat taken aback because I thought, why on earth would you move to Bulgaria if you hadn't ever visited? And I said, "Oh, no, yeah, we've been there about a dozen times." And she just lighted up. It changed her whole demeanor. Apparently, lots of people try to move to Bulgaria because it's cheap, even though they've never visited. And that's a shock to me. I can't imagine moving anywhere, even in the US, without first visiting that place. And yet people are taking such a big leap. One of the things that you often will hear complaints about in any new place is the bureaucracy of both the government and the healthcare systems. The reason people complain is not because it's worse than the US, but because it's different and they don't understand. If you get somebody to help you with those things, there are going to be challenges, but think about it. The last time you tried to register your car, wasn't it a bit challenging? And don't you sometimes have trouble managing insurance for your healthcare? I mean, things just are challenging. And the big part here is it's going to be different. And that will introduce challenges. And then, of course, there are language differences. Even if you move to England, you will find there are language differences. It is not the same English that you speak in Ashland. Here, it's interesting to me, people here who speak English, which is a very large portion of the population, speak American English. They don't speak British English. The schools teach English, and it's more generic, but mostly people learn English from movies, television, and video games. It's very interesting that most teenage boys particularly speak English intermittently with Bulgarian, even among their friends. And it's because they speak English all the time when they're playing games on their computer, because they're playing, that's the lingua franca of computer video games now. Not only is the game programmed to speak to you in English, to have the conversations in English, but everybody you talk to anywhere in the world is using English as the opportunity to speak. So I mentioned that we're privileged that English is so broadly adopted. It's interesting to me that here in Europe, the European Union still uses English as one of its primary languages, even though there are no English-speaking countries in Europe anymore, not in the European Union. Bulgarian's got quite a language difference, so we'll talk a bit about that. Oh, actually, that's where I am. This is the biggest challenge we faced. This is the Bulgarian alphabet. It is sometimes referred to as Cyrillic, but that's a more generic term which describes alphabet for quite a number of countries in Eastern Europe, including Russia and Ukraine. It's not used in Romania, but many of the countries between here and Ukraine use this Cyrillic alphabet. you'll probably, just by glancing, you'll recognize some of the characters. But some of them, very few, are actually what they appear. These four are pretty much what you would expect. The K is pronounced K. The T is pronounced T, although you'll notice that the small t is not a T at all, but rather an M. The A and E are A and Eh. These three look familiar, but aren't used at all the same. The character that appears to be an H is a N. The character that appears to be a P is a R and is pronounced as an R. And the Y is pronounced as U. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not. It's pronounced as U. My wife is just telling me that it's good I corrected that. These were unfamiliar characters, obviously. The one that looks like a U with a tail is a S, as in SAR. That's the word that you would most likely associate with this sound. It's a TS combination. The one that looks like a W with part of a tail is a sh, so they don't use SH, but rather a single character. The one next to it is even more complicated. It's a sh, which is essentially SHT. I misspoke earlier and said the Y, the character that looks like a Y is a U. It is not. That's the one that looks like I and O together. And you actually say U when you see that one. And then the backward R, which isn't a backward R at all, is a Y sound. So we have characters that look familiar and actually are. We have characters that look familiar and are something completely different. And we have characters that are absolutely unique, not at all common, not found at all in the Latin alphabet. And these four characters all look like B, but they are not. The first one is, the one next to the A is B, but then it's a V, down at the bottom it's A, and the one that looks like a small b twice doesn't say anything at all. It's a modifier to other characters. So this is an interesting part of our challenge, is trying to figure out how to do this. By the way, if you're going to try to move to a country where they speak a language other than your own, you might want to try to learn it first, but that's hard. We did find, however, it was pretty easy to learn the alphabet first. So we mastered the alphabet before coming here, and we could figure out how to say words. We just didn't have any vocabulary at all. I think this is a good point to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about benefiting from the change, but let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll resume. I'll resume. You can come back or not at 7:45. I'm sorry. It's going to be what, 9:45, I guess, isn't it?
Yes.
I have real trouble with managing the time like that. So anyway, we'll talk to you again in 5 minutes. How's that? Do we have any questions that need to be addressed in advance of that?
Jan, there's a question in the chat that says, when did you each begin studying the local language?
Well, we began learning the alphabet like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, even quite a while ago. And we will talk about healthcare. We didn't start studying the language until we got here, but we've been here a week when we found a language school and started our lessons in the second week. And we two days a week go for a 1-hour lesson. And we are not mastering Bulgarian. It is one of the hardest languages in the world to learn. At least that's what everybody tells us, which is interesting because everybody here learns English starting in the 3rd grade. But it's a challenge. To the point about not talking about healthcare, we will in fact talk at some length about healthcare, because the most challenging question we got is, what are you going to do about healthcare? We've worked that one out. So now we'll start the 5 minutes, and I'll start talking again at 9:47. Okay. And we're back. Bear with me just a moment.
Jan, while you're doing what you're doing, I'm just curious from all of you, I put this in the chat, but what countries are you considering moving to? I'm just curious about it. And as Jan gets going again, you can throw that in the chat if you're able to.
You have jumped the gun on that.
Uh-oh.
That's the word cloud.
Oh, never mind. Don't put it in there. Do not put it in there because the word cloud is going to be much better.
Oh yeah, it'll be so cool when we get to the word cloud. Sorry, I had to go back off microphone because Amy left the bathroom, the only other room in our apartment, and came out here, and her phone was feeding back through. She's listening and what I was saying was coming back through the computer. So, benefiting from the change. It's a good idea to thin your stuff. I'm just going to throw that out there. Most of us have way too much stuff. I know we had way too much stuff. We had stuff that meant we couldn't even, sometimes can't fit the car in the garage sort of things. We don't have any of that now. By the way, the primary reason to thin your stuff if you're going to move is you don't want to take any of it. We see all the time people will post on Facebook in one of the Facebook groups, we're moving from the UK to Bulgaria. Who would we talk to get 5 different vans to haul all of our stuff across Europe? And almost anyone who sees that message says, why would you bring all your stuff here? It's much cheaper and nicer to get new. And it's just a whole lot of trouble to haul it. So it is generally better to just really thin down. Even for Laura, for instance, who will in fact be able to drive to Mexico to haul her stuff there, you still have to worry about customs. We shipped 4 boxes of things we just thought we needed from Ashland to Plovdiv. Those 4 boxes, there were 4 small U-Haul boxes. They actually said small box on the side. That's what they were. Customs here wanted $2,200 to release them to us. And we didn't pay that. We figured out a way of convincing them they were just personal items and there shouldn't be a $2,200 fee. But still, it was things like little pieces of pottery or, cute little memorabilia, all the stuff we really wanted, but it proved far more trouble than we anticipated in trying to get it here. And if we had instead decided we were going to bring a car and all of our living room furniture, that would have been much more difficult.
And I'll say for Mexico, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Jan. I believe for Mexico, there is a one-time fee waiver but you have to do an inventory, list everything that you have and bring it in one time. If you have more stuff to bring in later, there's going to be a lot more charges involved in that. So yeah, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to downsize and just take what we need. We have the advantage of when we go there on vacation, whether we drive or fly, we can take small stuff with us every time we go if we want it.
Yeah.
And once the house is built, we'll be able to start doing that more before we actually move there. But that's just a little more convenient.
We actually did that as well. As a matter of fact, I came to visit and brought with me 4 suitcases full of stuff and took home with me 3 empty suitcases. And then when we came again, we brought 4 more suitcases full of stuff and shipped those 4 boxes. But that was it. We didn't bring any furniture. We didn't bring anything. I mean, one difference, by the way, is if you're moving to Europe, apartments are furnished. It's almost a universal truth that when you move into your apartment, it's completely furnished when you move in. If you're going to buy a house or build a house, obviously that wouldn't be true, but I would recommend against that until you've decided where you want to live for sure. You do get to make new friends, and this has actually been a shock to us, how quickly we've made new friends. The woman who teaches us the Bulgarian language, with whom we meet twice a week in a formal setting to have lessons. sat with us for 2 hours at the cafe attached to the hotel our apartment is part of this evening before this class, just because she wanted to enjoy our company. It has been really easy to get to know people here. We hear about people not making friends, but it appears those are people who are too shy or perhaps introverted to really get out and try to meet new people. We also have made quite a number of, I mentioned the woman who is an American who's been living outside the country for 15 years. We met her through what's referred to as an expats group. And it's very easy to find groups in almost any community you're in of either uniquely American expats who've relocated or immigrants who've relocated, or just people. The group we met Kathy, the American, in actually meets once a week on Wednesday evening for some amount of time, depends on how long people want to hang out. And it is about equally split Bulgarians who want to practice their English and Americans, Brits, people from all over Europe, in fact, who are just, actually, no, that's not even true. 2 people are from Singapore, I think. Anyway, somewhere in Southeast Asia. So people from all over who just want to get together and talk to people in English in a comfortable way. So making new friends is really just a matter of getting out and doing it. I will mention, it's also a good idea to make old friends in the new place. And I know Laura has one of those, and we certainly do as well. I mentioned that my wife and I came after our daughter had been with us for 15 years. We came with her to Bulgaria, and we hired a guy to drive us around because you can't get a bus tour that goes to the orphanage your child was born at or was a resident at, for instance. And you can't get a bus tour that's going to take you to the places you want to see. So we hired a gentleman who turned out, and by the way, his name is Svetlamir, but nobody ever calls him that. His name is Patrick because he had a girlfriend in the 5th grade whose name was Patrick, and he's now 53, and her name was Patricia, so they called him Patrick. And anyway, we've known Patrick now for 8 years, and we're having breakfast with him tomorrow. He has been unbelievably valuable in helping us settle in here. And we recommend trying to find someone in your new location who you can trust and enjoy the company of. And you need to be able to do both of those things. And trying to take advantage of them. It's especially valuable if you don't speak the local language. Laura, can you speak to that as well? I know you had a similar situation.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. My wife wanted to go to Manzanillo. She just had this inkling that was where she wanted to go. She looked up tour guides on TripAdvisor before we went the first time, and she found a guy named Danny Tours, and she went, this is the guy we need to know. And we got down there, and he is the guy you need to know. He will do anything and everything for you. He's born and raised there. So we've known him for about 4 years. He's actually overseeing the construction of our house to make sure laborers are doing the work and getting paid. He's not a contractor, but he's really overseeing everything, making sure everything is, nobody's squatting or, anything like that. Anything we need. There was a dog that I found on a tour he took us on at a salt mine that I decided I wanted to adopt. And my wife was like, no, you can't adopt this dog. And so she secretly talked to him, and he showed up with that puppy and its brother, and then ended up adopting them himself because we decided not to take him home. So anyways, having somebody there who knows the area, knows the language is absolutely beneficial. I encourage you to seek those people out because they will make your life so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention that Patrick's not the only guy, because we had several times stayed with a hotelier here in Plovdiv. It's a 7-room hotel, and it ended up, he built the apartment we're in. So it's 7 guest rooms and us as full-time residents in this one apartment. And his name's Mitko, and Mitko has been unbelievably valuable. Patrick has really been useful, but he lives 4 hours away in another town. Meatco is in the building 12 hours a day. And when we need something, he's in fact said, you know, my car sits here 12 hours a day. You may as well use it if you want. We haven't, because we don't want to take advantage. But, and in fact, Amy, my wife, doesn't want to take advantage. I would. And I think he's disappointed we don't take advantage of that. But I mentioned the customs problems. Well, we mentioned it to him, just sharing our frustrations. And he said, I think I'll call my wife and see what she can do. Well, he called his wife. She's an accountant working in an office with only 4 or 5 people. One of the guys in the office has a cousin whose sister, no, his cousin works for customs in Sofia, which is an hour and a half away. And that's where the boxes were stuck, and we needed them here in Plovdiv. And he called his cousin, and that cousin transferred them. And then he called somebody. It was amazing. This is true everywhere, but it has been really obvious to us in Bulgaria. Everybody knows a guy. And if you just happen to get to the right person, they're going to be able to put you in connection with a guy who can do that or the other thing. And having a network like that makes all the difference. So we really strongly recommend you do your best to try to get to know people. You also benefit from getting onto, I know that Facebook is a controversial issue right now, but the user groups, the expat groups on Facebook are unbelievably valuable. We're part of one for Americans in Bulgaria, also for expats in Plovdiv and a couple of others. So we can ask questions specific to Plovdiv if we need to, and we can also ask specifically American questions if we need to. And those two different audiences are really valuable to us. Those were valuable to us in prepping as well. So don't wait until you get to the new country. Those people have already been through it. Ask them for help on any questions you might need help with.
And I'll just share real quick a little story on that. This kind of has to do with culture, but also with making friends with expats and that sort of thing. We have a friend that we'd made there, a Mexican lady whose son passed away while we were there on vacation. I wanted to get her a bereavement card. I looked everywhere and I could not find one. And when I talked to the expat group, they said, yeah, in Mexico, they don't do greeting cards. You either have to bring them with you or make your own. So that was super interesting. And I would have been very frustrated if I'd kept looking and could never find them. So that was helpful.
Well, the same's true here. If you ask for somebody about a card, they'll point you to postcards or playing cards.
I got sent to school supplies a lot. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, well, maybe they were expecting you to make your own.
Maybe.
It's important to embrace cultural differences. We very often, and I don't want to work from stereotypes here, but very often we see the Brits complaining about how things work in Bulgaria. They're just not happy with Bulgaria. And we, as I've said, have decided we really like the cafe culture and the slow pace and the we'll get it done someday. I don't even know what day of the week it is most of the time. Why would I care? And that's pretty much where people are in Bulgaria as well. And I think that's much more common outside the US. I don't think that's unique to Bulgaria by any means. I think you would find that certainly in Mexico. I had a roommate in college 20 years ago, and I know that doesn't sound like very long ago, but I was working on an advanced degree at the time. But I had a roommate from Bahrain, and he always talked about, he actually was culturally Indian, and he said, you know, Indian people time, I'll be there eventually. And it's just a much more casual atmosphere. People are slower and people take their time, except when they're driving. You have to be willing to embrace that. Now, my wife and I were both state employees. We worked as bureaucrats for years. I mean, like decades. We understand that the person you're talking to at the counter did not decide that this is the form you have to fill out. Somebody said, when people show up, hand them this form, and then you check it for them. It's not their fault. any more than it's the fault of the gate agent that you can't get on the plane yet. It's just the situation. And you have to be willing to embrace that situation and be more comfortable with it and try to seek help where you can. We hired someone, for instance, to help us with the immigration issues. We had Meetco with us every time we went to deal with customs, because while everybody we bumped into there spoke English, it was nice to have somebody who spoke Bulgarian, and it made things smoother. It is important that you master a new bureaucracy in healthcare and government. Healthcare is an interesting one here. And somebody said, gee, you didn't talk much about healthcare. I don't want to talk a lot about our experience, but I will tell you it works out. You have to stay for the second class if you want to hear about how things are going being in Bulgaria a lot more, because that's what we're here to talk about. But I will tell you, we have been not satisfied, but delighted with our experience with the healthcare system here in Bulgaria. Nobody is delighted with government, so I won't suggest we're delighted with interactions with the government. But we have gotten everything we needed there. By the way, one thing that has been good for us here, and I would recommend you think about how you might set this up. When we agreed to rent this apartment from Meetco, he said, and I'll take care of utilities if you pay X amount more each month. So rather than us having to deal with yet another bureaucratic system in the utilities, we just pay him rent, and he pays for all of our electricity, for the water, for everything. So we don't have to worry about where to go and do those things. I know people tell you that healthcare outside the US is not to be trusted, it's not good, it's not. They're wrong. We are simply delighted. I'm 68 years old and an American. That means I have high blood pressure and diabetes. That just happens. Doesn't happen anywhere except America, but it did happen to me. I'm getting both treated very effectively here without any significant costs. And by the way, we have insurance because it's required, but we don't use it. It was $150 for each of us for a year. You can imagine it doesn't cover much, but we pay as we go on everything in healthcare. And it's been very affordable. Let's see, we got some chats here. Let me see if I can go ahead. Yeah, an immigration facilitator is a good idea, Laura. Okay, so next point. Learning a new language is not about learning a bunch of words. It's about a bunch of concepts. You get to learn new and interesting concepts from a new language. So for instance, this is the Bulgarian spelling, but if I respell it in Latin characters, it's Aiayak. So A, A, and then Ikratko is the second letter. That next one looks like nothing, but it's an L. Ya and K. So it's Alyak. And what it means is, it means working hard at doing nothing. And this is the motto of the town we live in. This has been a very important concept for us to learn. One of the things you hear a lot about retirees is American retirees are told they have to find something to keep themselves valuable, or they're going to feel like they're wasting their time. And in fact, at a meetup last Saturday, we met with a guy from Germany who's here as an expat working as a teacher. He figures he's only going to be here 3 or 4 years. And his main question was, what do you do with your time? How do you fill your days? And Amy and I were both kind of taken aback because we fill our days and we don't even think much about it. We tour, we drive around. Yesterday, we went leaf peeping and we're in a rental car. By the way, I could show you some photos. It's amazing. We're working hard, not doing much of anything and having a great life. So what I'd like to do now, I was expecting, that's still coming up later. What I'd like to do now is use a bit of a breakout and give you, it says 20 minutes. Oh, sorry. It says 20 minutes, but we're not going to do 20 minutes. We're going to call it 15. 20 minutes discussing 4 or 5 non-touristy things you could do. What would you be able to do if you moved to this new country? And this is an important exercise because you're not going to be a tourist. Amy and I live here. We're not here as tourists, although we did go leaf peeping yesterday and it was fun. And we would have done the same if we were living in Ashland, or previously we were in Salem for several years, a long, long time. So those are touristy things. PowerPoint is fighting me. But what could you do? I'll tell you, I had talked to people for 2 years about moving to Bulgaria when I realized I would be living in Europe, not just Bulgaria. So for instance, at Christmas, we're having a friend from Canada come to visit, and our daughter, the friend is also our daughter's godmother, so they wanted to be together here. And we're going to tour the country just a little bit. That is kind of touristy. But the next thing we're going to do is, after our friend goes back to Canada, we're going to drive to Istanbul. Why don't you try that? Try driving to Istanbul from where are you? Ashland or Central Point. I mean, you just don't get to do that. When I talk about the trip to get here next week, I will tell you, I drove from here to Greece, over into the Adriatic coast, all the way up the Adriatic, across Italy, through France, Germany. I'm imagining that just to remind you. Germany, Austria, not Australia, that's a different continent. Romania to Bulgaria. Oh, I missed Hungary. Went through Hungary. I was in 13 countries in 18 days. And you just don't get that where you are. I mean, it'd be hard to get to 13 countries in the next 18 days in a car. And every time we went to a new country, it was different. It mentions here, you might volunteer at English language school. I do that because they like to have native English speakers. So there's a group of 13-year-olds who are learning English and have been studying it since the 3rd grade, and now they're in 8th grade. They're quite competent in English. I have no problem whatsoever having conversations with them. And I just go in for 40 minutes once a week and talk with them so they can experience English with somebody who doesn't struggle with it. Although that struggle becomes more of a problem daily. But anyway, for me, not them. It gets easier for them, but things happen. So I'd like to send you now into breakout rooms. Laura, can you initiate that? And we'll just send people randomly to the breakouts.
How many folks do you want in each room?
I think if we do 10 rooms, let's see, there are 41 people. That'll put 4 people per room. One will have 5. That should be reasonable.
Okay. And how long are they going in for?
We'll make it let's make it 12 minutes. That'll be an interesting time. And that'll give us some time to talk about it before we wrap.
All righty. Here you all go. We'll see you back in a little bit.
Oh, I'm supposed to join.
It should send you in automatically. If it doesn't, you might see a button pop up that says join.
I said no to joining the break.
That's okay. And then Laura, do you recall how I share my screen here to the breakouts? Or is that
go to your the more on your toolbar, and there should be one that says share screen to breakout rooms.
Okay, more disappeared. Oh, it's behind this.
Are you all having problems getting over to the room? Did it ask you to join?
It asked me to join, Laura, but I said no.
Oh, you didn't want to go into a breakout room. Okay.
She feels like she might be a ringer.
Hey, Amy. Nice to see you.
Okay, I just talked to you and you couldn't hear me.
Nope.
What I was saying was this Coke bottle has a permanently attached lid because they
I
got
noticed,
tired of having lids come off and be thrown around.
I noticed when in Austria when we were there last month that the water bottles had the lids permanently attached. Yeah.
It's an EU requirement that all bottles have
Oh,
lids permanently attached.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's kind of an annoyance, but once you get used to it, it's not a problem.
I know I spent the first couple times ripping the lids off and
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
yeah, well, now I know.
Did you set a timer on the rooms or are we just
I
watching
did.
time?
Yep.
You did. Okay, I thought you
Mhm.
would. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Laura, it kicked me out of my room, so
Oh, okay. Where do you know who you were in with by chance?
I think room 4.
Okay. I'll send you back over. Are any of you who are still here considering Mexico? I'm happy to answer any questions about Mexico if you have any.
Yes, I have a question about Mexico.
Okay.
Uh, I'm interested in cooperative living
Hmm.
for seniors. And I wondered if there might be some kind of co-housing organization or such that might be uh, putting together a living group somewhere in Mexico.
Oh, interesting. I don't know the answer to that, but I can certainly check into it for you.
Oh, wonderful.
Um, let's see. Let me do a little search here real quick. Do you know what part of Mexico you're interested in?
Well, Baja appeals to me, so I could take my vehicle there without a bunch of paperwork.
Yeah. I know she left the meeting, but I know there's somebody who's living in Baja right now, so she might be a good resource to ask that to.
Oh,
Um, but I am asking Chat GPT right now because it will be able to give me some answers. Yes, there absolutely are. The ones that I'm finding right now may or may not be specific to seniors, but there's certainly places you can investigate.
Laura, Amy just pointed out that we could put that onto the Moodle if you'd like.
Mm,
If you want to share it with me, I can put it there. Or
okay,
you can put it on the Moodle if you'd like to learn all about Moodles.
I probably should do that.
Well, it's where people are going. What they had before was the learner notes we used last year was local in-house developed, and Moodles are now these very well uh, executed national systems.
Okay.
So you might want to use them at work, for instance,
Yes, for sure.
to share resources and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Jim, the other thing I would recommend for you, and anybody who's considering Mexico, and I had put something about this in the chat, but there's a program called the Mexico Relocation Guide, which I'll probably share more about later. It does cost to buy it. It's $500, $495, but you get lifetime access and they're constantly updating it. And there are so many resources on there. I can't even tell you. It's a really, really thorough program. It has vetted facilitators that it recommends, just so much information. I highly recommend it.
Thank you for that recommendation. I've been subscribed to their online messages for some time, and I haven't popped for the $500 package. But this is great to have somebody who recommends it.
Absolutely. It is absolutely worth the $500.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I've really enjoyed their videos.
Yeah,
Visiting,
she does a great job with it.
yeah, visiting various towns and talking about all the living conditions there and what to watch out for and
Yep.
what not to miss.
Yep. A lot of information on immigration. She's really, really up to date on everything. So she makes a really concerted effort to make sure she has up to date information.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Looks like everybody should be coming back here in a few seconds.
I'm also subscribed to Mexperience.
Yes, I've seen that one also.
Uh-huh.
10 seconds.
Thank you so much for your help.
You're welcome.
I assume that means people are, but yes, everybody's showing up. Look at all the smiling, happy faces everywhere. What I'd like to do now is just ask a few of you at your leisure or comfort to just offer up some of what you decided in there. What could you do if you moved that you can't do where you are? Because if there isn't anything, why would you move? Anyone?
We talked about hiking and birding and going to local farmers markets, sketching, taking classes locally, visiting local libraries for all kinds of activities and for cultural immersion.
Actually, your mention of farmers markets reminds me, our experience has been throughout Europe where we visited. Farmers markets are not a Saturday thing in the summer. They're an everyday thing. You can get produce directly from farmers just by walking to a shared space. So that's a big deal. Yeah. Anyone else?
Jen in
I
the
think-
chat,
yeah.
they have join a choir, volunteer in a school to meet children, teachers, parents to connect to a community.
And
Yeah.
I didn't mention this in our group, but one thing that came to mind for me, because I'm very interested in music and considering Europe in general, there's so much musical history and so much to tap into that even though we have a wonderful musical culture here in the US, it's really exciting for me to think about exploring that outside of the United States. So that was just one thing that came to mind that I'd wanted to share.
Yeah. Actually, here in Plovdiv, there's a 2,000-year-old Roman theater that they dug up about 25 years ago, and they use it for concerts. My wife and I went to see the music of Queen there, not the Queen, but Queen the band. And you can volunteer to be an usher and attend events
Wow.
for nothing in a 2,000-year-old stone theater.
Amazing. Wow.
Anyone else? Jimmy, did you have something? You're muted.
Mentioned it quite a few times. It's so easy to travel to other countries and see other cultures, and within hours you can drive somewhere, or the flights. I understand, although I didn't take any. I was just in Portugal. I didn't take any other flights anywhere, but I hear the flights are pretty reasonable.
Well, they're also very uncomfortable, but they are reasonable. Ryanair and Wizz Air fly all over Europe for very little money. They don't let you take any bags with you to speak of. So that's a bit of a limitation, but I can fly to Paris for about $30 round trip. And we actually took a flight to Sicily last November, and I don't recall, Amy, do you know what that cost? $79 round trip from where we are. As I say, we're going to visit Istanbul soon, and we were thinking about flying, but we're just going to drive. It's only about 3 hours. So there are some advantages to being in a different place. Things change. Then again, I want to say there's a lot of the United States I never visited too. That I feel really bad. I'll probably never see the Grand Canyon, for instance. Anyone else have anything that they thought might be worth sharing?
Jack in the chat said get a Eurail pass, and if available, a local bus pass. European transportation, oh, chef's kiss. It's amazing.
Yeah. Honestly, I frequently see maps of where the railroads go in Europe, and it's like there's no place they don't go. And in the US, passenger rail is just not there. We don't have a car. One of my goals in moving here was to not buy a car. I wanted to never have a car again. Amy and I have been at odds over that for several months. And one of the things people say here in Bulgaria is, my wife said, so we decided we're going to buy a car. So we'll be buying a car. But we've been renting a car now and then, and we've been just taking the train when we needed to go somewhere. Interesting quilting and fiber arts. Join a group. Cooking classes. Cuisine is a big deal. It's different wherever you go. So.
And Shelley also mentioned connecting with your spiritual religious community if you have one.
Yeah, we actually met some Americans a few weeks ago who were here because the wife in the pair had a connection to North Macedonia, and she wanted to check on her family, her past family. So, her ancestors, that's what we call them. It's not easy to get a driver's license. In fact, it's a pain. We've wrapped our time, however. I didn't know how we would fill an hour and a half, and we have now reached the end. So this is what next week is about. It will be about planning. What goes into making a plan? How can I make this real? So we'll talk about that next week. Is there anything else we need to share before we call it a day? Hearing none.
I'd just like to say thank you for just kind of the breadth of kind of stuff that we talked about, and just having other people put their input in helps it be more organized, maybe, in terms of, well, what do I think about? And when you're in that very big picture place, you can go so many different directions. So I think this has given me some guidance for areas to explore, and I really appreciate that.
Well, and next week will be much more nuts and bolts. It's how do you make a plan? What do you need to make sure you consider? And we now know what we didn't consider that we should have, so it's in there. So,
great.
So we'll look forward to seeing all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Jim,
Same
I
time
already
next
emailed
week.
you that information.
Thank you.
Jan, are you going to be here for a minute or two if we miss something?
I can hang on, yes.
Oh, there was just a couple of things you said that I didn't quite hear. It was just a matter of hearing it. And one was that thing that you did yesterday. What was that activity?
Yeah, it's a reference from the Northeast. People go to Vermont to go leaf peeping, as in looking at leaves. And that's what we were doing. We rented a car and just headed south into the mountains, just an hour and a half or so, and just went looking at beautiful trees. It honestly, Amy and I both said in several points, this is just like hanging out around Ashland. It's amazing how similar Bulgaria is to, in fact, when we were planning to move, I did some calculations, and if you drive 4 miles south from Ashland, turn left and go absolute straight line, you get to where I am standing right now. So the weather's the same. It's just very similar experience. So.
Okay, and the other thing that I didn't quite hear, sorry for asking, is
No.
I think you said you were 58 or 68, but
68.
Oh, okay. Just wondering, just because of the healthcare question. So
Yeah, healthcare was a big concern. Every friend, and we'll talk more about this in the next class if you're going to participate in that. But every friend said, "What are you going to do about healthcare? Healthcare outside the U.S. is just terrible," and it just is not true. I had surgery here after I'd been here about 3 months. Went very well. I was just thrilled. It was outpatient surgery, and we chatted about life in the United States throughout the surgery as they were cutting away on my hand.
wow.
So, anyone else?
What about citizenship? Do you seek Bulgarian citizenship?
We don't have any need to vote here, so we're not too concerned about that. But we couldn't pursue it until we've been here 10 years anyway. So we'll be making that decision later. I'm going to be pretty old by then. I mean, not ridiculously old, but I just don't know exactly where I'll be and what I'm going to be feeling like 10 years from now.
Now, is there any advantage or disadvantage about stopping your U.S. citizenship? Because I think you have to choose. I'm not sure.
You don't have to choose. The U.S. is happy to get you to pay taxes. We'll talk about that next week. But you don't have to choose. You can have both citizenships. But if you abandon your U.S. citizenship, abrogate your U.S. citizenship, they charge you 40% of your worldwide wealth to get out.
Wow.
Because you no longer pay taxes after that point. And we don't particularly want to give them 40% of what we own.
40% of your total wealth?
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you have time for another question or not, but yeah.
I do have dinner cooking, but it'll wait a little while.
Well, when we told our son that we were thinking about maybe doing this, he said, well, they can freeze your assets. I mean, implying that the government or something would freeze your assets. I don't know.
Well, that has happened to people who've gone to Russia, for instance. We don't keep any assets in Bulgaria. We have bank accounts, and this is more next class, not even next week, but I'll tell you, we have a bank account here in Bulgaria, each of us, because you can't have a joint account here. We also have an account with a company called Revolut, which makes transfer of funds really easy. It's like Wise, there are a number of companies like that. But we also have accounts in the US, and we keep the bulk of our funds in the US and transfer money on which we will live for this month to Bulgaria. And then we just spend that down. So if they were to freeze all of our assets here in Bulgaria, they might, on a good day, get as much as $3,000.
But they don't freeze your assets here in the US.
No, the US is very happy to have us continue to receive our monies and transfer them as we need. There's a bit of a delay. It can take us 3 days sometimes because I transfer money from the US to Revolut and it comes in as US dollars. I have to then make it Bulgarian leva and transfer it to my bank account here in Bulgaria. And it can take, well, if I try to do that on a Friday afternoon, it is guaranteed I won't have it until Tuesday, or potentially Wednesday. If I do it on a Monday, I'm still likely to get it on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. So there's no problem keeping accounts in the US
Nope.
and transferring them using Revolut.
Yeah. And Revolut doesn't charge me anything to exchange funds into alternative currencies, which is really useful because I have to exchange all of my funds into Bulgarian leva. Soon, on the 1st of January, they're going to turn off the Bulgarian lev and we'll be using euros. We're entering the Eurozone on January 1st.
Oh. Oh. You
I
said
will tell you, I just did a quick search as far as freezing assets in the US, and really the only time they will do that is if you have some really bad tax issues or criminal activity. So other than that, it's not really too bad of a concern.
But I have heard of people trying to emigrate to Russia. They transfer in funds, and then the Russian government freezes those assets. So. Anything else?
Well, thank you so very much. It's a wonderful class.
Thank you all. This is not nearly as much fun if people don't attend. So I really appreciate your being a part of it.
Okay, see you next week.
Time.